Recording. Okay. Hi, good morning to everyone. And it's nice to see everyone bright and early again. 8 o'clock. It's a fairly overcast Tuesday morning. But thank you very much to everyone for joining us bright and early for today's session, which I think is going to be a really interesting one. Thank you very much to Bernie for bringing our speaker this morning. So I am your chairman, Julius Barcelona, and all right. And after that, we show our gratitude to everyone that makes this possible. If we may please show on screen the Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation membership. So the Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation is an organization in partnership with the Management Association of the Philippines. We are a member-supported nonprofit foundation. And without the people that you see on screen right now, we would not be able to bring you these sessions every week and to do what we do. So let's please give our gratitude to all of our special partner institutions, senior special partner institutions, corporate members and individual members. Thank you so much. Your support allows us to continue bringing you our weekly sessions and perhaps even future activities. So thank you very much for being with us and for your generosity and support. Okay, so without further ado, may I please ask our president, Mr. Ernie Ordonez, to introduce our speaker for this morning.
Good morning to all. I'm using two devices right now. I have to go to another room because the other device is interfering with my status. Okay. First of all, I'm very happy to have the privilege and honor of introducing our speaker, Camille Acosta. She is going to talk to us about the way of the future. In fact, if you read her invitation, it's very impressive. Basically, she is the founder and executive chef of the Good Choices, which is catching on very fast. Formerly, she's previous head chef of one of the best vegetarian restaurants, and she's been featured on television, print, and digital media. More interesting, however, is that she'll share with us Filipino plant-based food. Lately, you've been finding out that Filipino plant-based food is catching on here and internationally. Basically, in the introduction, in the invitation we gave you, it said that she'll give us a bird's eye view of this, the opportunities for growth, and more interestingly, and we should really pay attention to this, especially those who are clicking in from all over the world. Incidentally, we've grown from 800 to more than 5,000 internationally. Really, the challenges in sourcing, production, marketing, and even government support. Basically, Camille, when you start, we'd like you to spend a few minutes on how you got into this, because we want to have a personal relationship with all our speakers, because our departed chair, our chair emeritus, Ramon Ilsorio, said that our foundation, which is Agribusinesses and Countryside Development, should not just be an educational session. You're not talking to students here. Of course, we're all students of life, but people who are connected in a business sense. So he told us that for every forum, see what you can do to get the speaker and her or his knowledge spread so that we can do countryside development and even poverty reduction. Now, what is most interesting here is that among the topics we're going to discuss would be government support, because here we've recently been accredited by the legislated Philippine Council for Agriculture and Fisheries, and we are now the chair of the International Trade Committee there. And because of that, we have contacts with different government agencies. So when there are difficulties, we can bring the speaker to them. We've been able to get them through Zoom to the secretaries, and there's movement. And therefore, we'd be interested in that. So without much further ado, please tell us before you start how you got into this. Maybe only 5 minutes, not like 20 minutes, 5 minutes, how you got into this. And at the last part, that's at the start, the last part, tell us how you think we can help because first of all, just hearing you will already enrich us, and maybe it'll make us more healthy. But more importantly, if we can help because of our contacts with business people, contacts with government, banks, other private sector people, if you can tell us how we can help spread the word. And as I said, we used to be about in terms of participation, we used to be about 80. Now we're more than 5,000, and we're around the world. 20% abroad, 80% Philippines. So if you can tell us how we can help your advocacy, um, especially when it comes to getting money from banks or dealing with government, etc. Our privilege is that we're connected with the government in a special way because MAP ABCD is a member only a few years ago of the Philippine Council for Agriculture and Fisheries. Using that, we can actually link the speaker to secretaries and other people very important in our life because they say that to really help, we need government support. And sometimes government hinders rather than helps. We can help there because usually the top people don't know what's going on at the bottom when it comes to irritable regulations. At the same time, if there's a good idea, we can get them to support it with not only information dissemination. They have 70,000 workers around the country, right? That can help in technology, but also in terms of getting to international funding sources, etc. So without much ado, I'd like, oh, incidentally, I ask Camille how old she was because, our board used to be everyone above 60 years old. Now everyone is below 45 years old, right? And Camille is in her 30s. She's done a great thing. She'll tell us a bit about herself. And we want this new board, relative new board, to really push through where the board meeting last night. We want to push through and get the germs of wisdom of our speakers. And Camille is certainly a gem of wisdom. Not only gem of wisdom, she's like us. She's business, correct? Because without business and sustainable profit, it dies. And so she's not only terrific in terms of her knowledge, but in terms of her skill in getting businesses going. So Camille, two things. One, tell us a few things about yourself, how you got into this, and how others like you could get into it. And secondly, at the end, how we can help with our contacts, etc. So without much further ado, Mr. Chair, I give the floor back to you
Yes, Iboled.
to give it to Camille
Na-hype na kami.
Acosta.
All right. Go ahead, Camille.
Hi again, good morning everyone, and thanks for being here and thanks for having me today. So I'm Camille Acosta. I am the founder and executive chef of The Good Choices. A little something about myself. I've been strictly vegetarian since I was 18. I'm 35 now. So that's 17 years of not consuming meat, fish, eggs, chicken, so no meat at all. How I got into this, I come from a family of vegetarians. Everybody in my household is a vegetarian. So I've been accustomed to seeing and helping prepare vegetarian food since I was 7 years old. So I come from a very, shall I say, old school type of family where if you're a girl, you're really supposed to be with your mother in the kitchen. So it's really necessary for women in our family to be involved in preparing food. So I guess this is initially I hated it. I saw it to be slave labor from my mom. So she'd be, telling me peel the potatoes and roast the eggplants and stuff like that. I hated it, but I guess this is where my love for the kitchen started. I actually took up a very different course in college. I am a Philippine Cultural Studies major from the University of the Philippines, Manila. So I studied more of the humanities side, more about Philippine culture. But right after graduating from college, I thought really of going back to the kitchen because I really love preparing food. So in 2012, I was part of the vegetarian kitchen. The vegetarian kitchen is actually a family restaurant. It's one of the very first vegetarian restaurants in the country. It opened late 80s. So it was established even before vegetarianism was actually a thing in the Philippines. So I served there for 6 years. But in 2016, I had this idea. It stemmed from a very simple problem. So I actually have two kids who are vegetarian from the womb. I have two daughters who have been vegetarian from the womb, and my husband also had to turn vegetarian because I wouldn't marry him if he, he wouldn't turn vegetarian. So my daughter at the time was about to go to school. So being a mom, a first time mom with a toddler, a school age toddler. So I was very excited to prepare her baon, her usual packed lunch for school. So I was going around in a grocery store. This was in 2016. I was going around in the grocery store, opening freezers upon freezers of lined up freezers upon freezers produce. And then it dawned upon me that if you're a vegetarian, I mean, during that time, 2016, if you were a vegetarian or if you were trying to eat healthy, there were very few options available in the market. So you see freezers upon freezers of processed meats. There's hot dogs and nuggets and tapa, tocino, longanisa, you name it, it's there. But for vegetarians like us or people who are trying to cut down on their meat intake, we just have the usual bread and cereal and oatmeal and stuff like that. But as being Filipinos, we love rice. So there was really an absence of plant-based options in the market. So I went home. I told my husband, I'm going to do something. I'm going to try something out. So I made my first batch of tapa, tocino, and longanisa in my home kitchen. And then the good choices actually started from there. So I started with breakfast, and now the lineup of the good choices has expanded to include red heat and eat viands, and we also have food service packs, and so we've expanded our lineup from breakfast to include a lot of other products. So that's basically how I started producing plant-based food. And today I'll be presenting Filipino plant-based food. So trends, opportunities, and most importantly, the challenges that we're facing as an industry. So if I may share my screen with you. Okay. So can everybody see my screen?
Yeah,
Yes.
we're good.
Okay. So Filipino plant-based, exploring trends, opportunities, and challenges. So let's first start our talk with a definition of plant-based, because plant-based is actually a very new concept, especially in the Philippines. So when you say plant-based, it can be used to describe food or a diet. It is a food or diet consisting largely or solely of vegetables, grains, pulses, or other foods derived from plants rather than animal products. So it's a way of eating wherein majority of the food stuff being consumed is sourced from plants. So you shy away from products that are derived from animal sources, and plant-based is basically most people get into plant-based for health reasons. That's why they opt to consume a more plant-centric diet. But I'm sure you've also heard of the term vegetarian, vegan, and flexitarian. I think plant-based, vegetarian, and vegan, these are very widely interchanged terms. So actually, when you say vegetarian, this is more of a 90s term. This was most prominently used during the 90s. There are actually different kinds of vegetarians. So there are pescatarians, or people who don't eat red meat and white meat but still eat fish. So they still consider themselves vegetarian. There are also lacto-ovo vegetarians. So these are people who still take in dairy and who still take eggs, but who don't take any other form of meat. So they don't take fish, they don't take red meat, chicken, beef, pork, but they still enjoy dairy and eggs. So if you go to a lot of restaurants, sometimes when you say I'm looking for a vegetarian option, they'll serve you egg. So some people consider eggs as still part of a vegetarian diet. And then there are lacto-vegetarians. These are people who don't take any form of meat, not even eggs, but still take in dairy. Okay. And then there are vegans. I'm sure you've heard about the vegan movement in the Philippines. So veganism is actually not just a diet, but it's a philosophy that seeks to exclude all forms of exploitation of and cruelty to animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. So they are basically not consuming any form of animal byproduct. They don't take honey, they don't use leather, vegans don't use um, makeup or toiletries or any products that have been tested on animals. Um, they don't take products with food additives derived from animals, like the red food coloring, which they make by grinding up insects to get their red pigment. So veganism is actually a philosophy which seeks to reduce or eliminate all forms of cruelty against animals. So these are people who don't take meat, who don't use any product derived from animals because of ethical considerations for the animals. And then there's a new wave of people who identify themselves as a flexitarian. So flexitarians basically are people who are primarily vegetarian, but occasionally eats meat or fish. These are people who tell us, I eat vegetables 5 times a week, but I have my cheat day on weekends where I go to a restaurant to eat all the putok batok food I can. So these are people who are flexible in their diets. They are also a very important segment because the flexitarian segment, they are very open to trying out plant-based food. So just a little primer on terms: vegetarian, flexitarian, vegan, and of course, what plant-based means. And then, if I may mention, people get into going plant-based for a variety of reasons. So most people do it for health. There's a surge in cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, cancer, a lot of diseases, and studies show, there are a lot of studies actually showing that there are a lot of diseases that can be prevented or reversed by going into a plant-based diet. So there are actually a lot of people who are getting into the diet willingly or forcibly, there are a lot of people na pinagbawalan na ng doktor, mataas cholesterol mo, you have to cut down on your meat intake. So they don't have any course of action, any other course of action but to change their diet and to turn plant-based. Of course, there are people who get into going plant-based due to ethical considerations. These are primarily the vegans who are after animal liberation. And people, now there's a growing movement, especially in the Gen Z demographic, that are after sustainability. So there are lots of talks now about global warming and its possible effects on the earth and humanity in the years approaching. So it has been identified that the animal industry is the biggest contributor to global warming worldwide. It surpasses even the carbon footprint of all transportation, airplanes, cars, all forms of transportation. It's still the animal industry that contributes most to global emissions. So there are people who actually go into eating plant-based because of sustainability. And there are people also who get into the diet or the lifestyle because of religion. So such as myself, I'm Hare Krishna. My entire family is Hare Krishna. There are Buddhists and Seventh-day Adventists. So people who get into the diet because of their faith or their religious philosophy. Okay, next, I will be talking about the Filipino in plant-based. What is the landscape in the Philippines of Filipino plant-based? So these are data actually from 2021. They did a lot of statistics post pandemic. So they found out that in 2021, 5% of the Filipino population are vegetarians, while 2% of the population is vegan. So in 2021 also, there was an increase in the consumption of non-meat food. So this non-meat food expanding from plant-based milk to plant-based meats and cheeses. So there was an increase, and they forecasted the consumption to reach 84.8 million US dollars by 2026. So this is like a 4.3 annual growth rate in 2021. So it's steadily growing every year. And then more Filipinos are making the switch to healthy meat alternatives. So data shows that up to 70% of Filipino diners are willing to try plant-based versions of meat-centric dishes. So you can see the evidence from, major um, fast food chains now offering plant-based options on their menu. There's Burger King offering the plant-based Whopper. There's Shakey's who did the Good Burger. There's Pancake House who's now offering a plant-based menu with chicken nuggets and plant-based pasta. There's Army Navy. There are a lot of restaurants actually who are already offering plant-based options. And then up to 17% of Filipino consumers identify closely with the semi-vegetarian lifestyle. So you'll find a lot of people now, you talk to them, and then they'll tell you, oh nga, ako mostly gulay lang kinakain ko eh. Actually, kumakain lang ako paminsan-minsan ng isda or white meat lang kinakain ko. So you'll actually hear a lot of Filipinos now saying that they identify closely with a semi-vegetarian lifestyle. So these are people who are called flexitarians. So I don't know if there are any flexitarians in the audience now, but it's a growing demographic. Up to 17% of consumers versus 5% vegetarians and 2% vegan. So the flexitarian consumers are more actually. And then I'm going to get into the Filipino plant-based industry. So who is part of the Filipino plant-based industry? So actually, it everybody who contributes from the agricultural processes to the end consumer. So this includes agricultural, the input supply, which most of the plant-based options being produced in the Philippines are made from soy protein, wheat protein, pea protein. Of course, those are made really from vegetables like malunggay, kangkong, carrots. So the input supply of these ingredients make up the agricultural aspect of the industry. And then there are the processors. So the processors are actually the ones processing from raw material to ingredients. Like from the soybeans, they make TVP or texturized vegetable protein, or from wheat protein, they make gluten, which is or seitan as they call it. So they manufacture ingredients, and there are processors such as myself who processes plant-based food products. So these are like food manufacturers that manufacture tocino or tapa or bacon, all plant-based. So they include the processors. And then, of course, distribution. This includes warehousing, logistics, wholesalers and retailers, and then food service establishments that bring the processed food to the end consumer. So this is and basically the industry in a nutshell. And if you are going to um, divide the different businesses operating in these different sectors, there are a lot there. We can classify them into three. Basically, there are the big corporations, the medium enterprises, and the micro and small enterprises. If you try to search online, you'll probably find that the market is largely saturated by the big corporations, which is no surprise. Century Pacific Food Inc., they are the makers of unmeat. They're actually already into export. San Miguel Corporation has Viga, so they are also widely distributed in major supermarkets and groceries. I don't know if they're into export already, but they're also partnering with a lot of food service establishments. Then there's Asia Brewery Inc., who make Vitamilk. So they are makers of plant-based milk. And then Geltech Health Foods Incorporated, they are a Cebu-based manufacturer. They actually are a local manufacturer of texturized vegetable protein. So they sell here in the country, and they also do export. Their clientele it's not mainly plant-based food processors, but there are also a lot of meat processors who get texturized vegetable protein for them to use as extenders for their meat products like burgers and corned beef. So they actually use texturized vegetable protein as extenders. And then there are medium enterprises. Two of these are the superfood grocer. They're actually already exporting their award-winning ice cream, plant-based ice cream made from coconut milk. They're already exporting to London and to the Middle East and to other countries. And then a newcomer is Worth the Health, or Omani. They actually got funding from a Singaporean think tank. So they're actually getting into export already with the Middle East and other Southeast Asian countries. And of course, there are the micro and small enterprises. There are hundreds of plant-based food manufacturers and restaurants that are part of the micro and small enterprise group. So there's Jack's Produce. They're basically producers of vegan sardines made from jackfruit. And then there's the Good Choices. So we make a lot of plant-based meats. spanning from the usual tapa tocino longanisa to deli favorites like ham and bacon and pork belly. So we make a lot of plant-based meats. And then there's vegetarian healthy bites. They make plant-based snacks like kalabasa chips and lechon kawali chips. They also make a lot of basically plant-based snacks. And then there are plant-based restaurants also, a lot of plant-based restaurants in the Philippines. Examples of which are Greenery Kitchen in Makati and Green Bar, and there's the Vegetarian Kitchen also in Quezon City. So these sum up the the size, the plant-based industry in terms of business size in the Philippines. So food trends here, okay. So if you are going to make, if you're going to survey plant-based food trends in the Philippines. So basically, these are the ones that are most produced. Of course, there's plant-based milk. I know a lot of you see this in groceries already, both locally produced and imported. So there are a lot of soy milk options. There's Vitasoy, Lactasoy, Vitamilk. So there are a lot of soy milk brands that you'll see. Even Soy and Bean from Frutas Holdings, they're also producing a lot of soy-based milk. Then there's oat milk, and then you'll also find a variety of nut milk. There's almond milk, pistachio milk. There's cashew milk. So it's another thing that's expanding in the market. Then there's also rice milk or milk that's made from grain. And then recently I saw from the DOST page that there are developing potato milk. So it's a new, it's the first time that I've heard of it. I saw it in DOST, and I hope we get to sample that. It's very interesting, potato milk, so I can actually um, imagine how it would be. So there are a lot of plant-based milk that's being produced, as well as the meat. So you'll find a lot of burgers, of course. There's a meat, there's vegan. You go to the shelves in the supermarkets, you'll find a lot of burgers, nuggets, and sausages and other deli items. But you'll also find Filipino viands. These are basically produced by the MSMEs. So there's, if you search online, there are a lot of small businesses producing tapa, tocino, there's sisig, there's bagnet, there's lechon kawali, dinakdakan, papaitan, lechon belly roll. They're actually making already the whole lechon carved after a pig. So you name it, the meats, it's there. There's different kinds of longanisa, if you want the sausage, if you want the items, including the taba and the balat and the putok-batok, there's crispy pata. So there are a lot actually of producers who are translating Filipino favorites into plant-based options already. And later I will discuss there's a big opportunity in this. And then there's also the vegetable-based food. So these are products also that you'll see a lot of, like I mentioned earlier, there's jackfruit sardines, and they actually use jackfruit, raw jackfruit, as an alternative to meat. So they turn it into sardines or pulled pork. So they actually use it. A lot of people use it already as plant-based alternative. And then you'll see this, there's kangkong chips, there's ampalaya chips, there's malunggay chips or malunggay dilis or powdered malunggay that they add to baked stuff or to augment the nutritional um, uh, um, content of certain food products. So there's malunggay. There's also people who are using puso ng saging to make hamburger patties or to make sausages. And people like I make bagoong out of carrots, out of grated carrots. There are a lot of people exploring already using vegetables to make plant-based food. Like there are also some who make spinach longanisa and other stuff like that. Then there are the makers of plant-based meat ingredients, like I mentioned, Geltec Health Foods. They make texturized vegetable protein, and there are other ingredients that are locally manufactured, like wheat protein and pea protein. And then, of course, mushrooms. This is also an emerging form of plant-based alternatives. You'll see a lot of mushroom chips in groceries. They come in different flavors, like original, there's spicy, there's sour cream and onion, there's cheese. So you'll see a lot of people using and cultivating mushrooms already because they're very easy to grow, very easy to cultivate. It takes, the capital is not so much. Then they also make these items into patties, like burger patties, and they make it also into other forms of viands like sisig. And then eggs. So this is another emerging plant-based food trend in the Philippines. There are a lot of producers already making plant-based versions of eggs. So you'll find packaged hard-boiled egg in the market, and then there's also scrambled egg, sunny side up egg. So they're also already making plant-based versions of that. And of course, desserts. Even Starbucks, they all already um, included plant-based cakes and cookies and other savory pastries in their lineup. So there are also more establishments that are actually offering plant-based desserts, cakes, cookies, other pastries, and there are ice cream already. A lot actually. Pan de Manila is already making plant-based ice cream, as well as Super Scoops. There are a lot of plant-based ice cream options. And then, of course, beverage. So there are a lot of restaurants now offering plant-based coffee. Frank Milk Bar actually just turned their entire menu to plant-based, meaning they don't use regular dairy milk. They use oat milk instead for their beverages. And if you go to a lot of coffee shops now, you can actually ask them to substitute the normal dairy milk for a plant-based milk option like coconut milk or soy milk or almond milk or oat milk. So there are a lot of establishments offering plant-based options for beverages, and also milk tea. There's Kahati. It's the first um plant-based um, milk tea franchise in the Philippines. So they have branches all over the Philippines already. So they're offering also plant-based milk tea. Okay, so these are actually in a capsule, the food trends in the Philippines. Okay, and then, okay, here I'd like to talk about opportunities in the Filipino plant-based sphere. So there's one, it's identified already that there's a steadily growing local market. After the pandemic or during the pandemic, people have, and of also there are a lot of other factors like ASF, African swine flu, and then the increased price of meat products in the market. But basically, there are a lot of precursors. There are a lot of reasons why people nowadays are looking into consuming more plant-based food. But one thing's for sure, there's a steadily growing local market in the Philippines. A lot of big corporations are getting into the plant-based food sphere, and like I always tell people, some of the people ask me, um how do you know that there's a growing local market in the Philippines? I know most people most Filipinos, their diet, it's still very much meat-centric. And if you go to a lot of Filipino restaurants, most of the items being offered are still meat. But how do you know there's a growing local market? I always tell them the big corporations like San Miguel and Century Pacific and Asia Brewery, they will not get into the plant-based food sphere if they didn't see, if they don't acknowledge that there's a market. So, of course, um, more Filipinos now are more open to to like sampling, just not going full on vegan or vegetarian, but trying out plant-based options on the menu for you know for variety, or because it's something new, it's something that they want to try, or it's something that they want to post on social media, like the early adapters. They want to be always to be the first one to try food trends. And then also there's a demand for export for Filipino plant-based food. We were recently part of IFEX. This was in May 26 to 28. So it's an international food fair. Most of the buyers are export buyers. So there were 8 of us, local plant-based food manufacturers um, that joined IFEX this year, and we got a lot of inquiries about export. So like for one, I got inquiries for export in the Middle East, in Dubai. I there was also someone who inquired if I can bring the products to Germany, because according to them there's a growing Filipino market abroad, and also there are a lot of Filipinos who migrated to um different countries, and also there's a growing appreciation now for Filipino food. So there are actually a lot of Filipino restaurants gaining fame in the United States, in Europe. So there's basically demand for export for Filipino plant-based products. So if there are a lot of plant-based products abroad, but most of these products are patterned to suit the foreign palate. The Filipino way of making plant-based food, where it's different. Our flavors are really different. There are higher tones of salt and sugar, which Filipinos really like because we eat rice. So we like our food seasoned well because we normally eat it with rice, and there's a growing demand for these products for export. And then another opportunity that I'd like to highlight, exploring other local ingredients. If you do a survey of plant-based products now, they are basically made primarily of soy and wheat, soy protein and wheat protein. And I don't know if there are local manufacturers or producers of soybeans, but a lot of the soy being manufactured in the country to make these texturized vegetable protein are imported from other countries. So basically, exploring other local ingredients, like for instance, I mentioned a while ago, potatoes. They are finding a way to turn potatoes into milk, or other ingredients like malunggay and carrots and other vegetables that are locally produced can be turned into other forms of plant-based food products, not just relying heavily on imported raw materials, but working really with farming communities and with producers like vegetable producers to make use of local ingredients. It's such a shame. I see a lot of produce. I see it on social media. Tons and tons of produce from, for instance, Cordillera farmers. They're throwing their tomatoes. They're throwing tons and truckloads of carrots, and they are actually posting on social media. Farmers are posting on social media that nobody is buying their produce, and they just end up throwing all of these products. And I look at the news, and I think to myself, the carrots, we can turn that into bagoong. And if we just get contacts to get all of these produce, the tomatoes, we can manufacture and turn into um spaghetti sauce, or a lot of things. So exploring other local ingredients, and the next point being, there's a large pool of knowledgeable food processors in the country. Um, this is a gap, actually. A lot of farmers make who produce their vegetables, if they are not if these produce aren't sold, their recourse really is to just throw them. But like I said, there's a large pool of knowledgeable food processors, and with research and development, we can work hand in hand with these farming communities, and we can discuss ways and means of utilizing their vegetables to make other forms of, other products that we can sell here in the country, or we can export. Case in point, I always say, would be carrots being made into bagoong. And I got this was in 2017. At that time, I still wasn't ready for the demand, but I there was uh uh a person who approached me and who asked me if I can export 20 tons of the carrot bagoong to their client in the Middle East. And at the time, I couldn't even fathom how to create 20 tons of a certain product. But you know fast forward to 2023, I am positive that with research and development, and with the vastness of local ingredients that we make in the country, you connect that with the large pool of knowledgeable food processors. And it's not only me. I know a lot of people in the plant-based industry sphere who can offer a lot of knowledge. And if they don't have the means and the capacity to manufacture the products themselves, we can manufacture the products, and just look for a market for these products. So these are some of the opportunities that we are not exploring. And of course, research and development. There's a lot of research. The plant-based food sphere is all about technology and innovation. So it's just unfortunate that we are not placing um a premium in research and development when it comes to creating more plant-based food options. But there's a recent movement now from DTI and the BOI that they really want to fast track the plant-based industry in the Philippines. So I think in terms of research and development, it's really something that we can really work on. And lastly, I'd like to talk about, I was very happy that Sir Oscar mentioned that talking about the challenges that we're facing, and the type of help that the industry, the Filipino plant-based industry, would require um, to help the businesses and the industry in general. I'm very happy that he mentioned that if we tell the panel the type of assistance that we need or the type of support that we need, that there's something that can be done. So I'd like to get into the challenges. Number one would be, of course, funding. This is basically the number one choke point when it comes to plant-based businesses. I'm speaking for myself, and I'm speaking for a lot of my other colleagues in the plant-based food sphere. I believe it's not just the plant-based industry, but all businesses in general. We suffered the pandemic, and then the inflation. There are a lot of ingredients now that are 200% or 300% more expensive. So we are really having a lot of problems with funding. And sales has dropped tremendously. Speaking from experience, we lost like 70 60 to 70% of our sales. Pre-pandemic, we were doing monthly gross sales of 2.5 million. That's about we were selling up to 3,000 kilos of plant-based food products. This was in up to February of 2020. January, February of 2020, we were doing up to 2.2 to 2.5 million in sales, gross sales. When the pandemic came, it started going down 1 million, and now we are not even reaching 500,000 of sales monthly. This is because I'm sure the spending power of Filipinos is not, it's really been affected by, most especially, inflation. There are a lot of people who lost their jobs. So we are, as an industry, as all businesses in general, we are having problems with funding. And it affects also the challenges when it comes to regulations and certifications. We all know that it's very expensive to get FDA certification in the Philippines, and you know unfortunately, to get the products across from being a moms and pops type of operation to being able to reach a wider market, to reach, like, supplying to major groceries or even to food service establishments and commissaries, you need to get um, FDA certification from the government. And it's a very expensive and tedious process. So this is actually a challenge for a lot of plant-based food manufacturers. And when you go to FDA, the plant-based industry being a new industry, they're even having a problem classifying our products. So if you look at the list of classifications of products in the FDA, you will not find a certain category for plant-based. So it's still being developed even by the FDA, even by the certifying offices. So it's really very hard and very tedious for plant-based businesses to get government certification, especially from the FDA. And if we don't get these certifications, these licenses, these papers, we will not be able to bridge being a small business, we will not be able to reach other markets, and we will not be able to export the products. And then the next challenge probably would be government support or the lack thereof. I'm sure, well, recently there is more support coming from the government. Like I mentioned, DTI and DOST, they're giving assistance, financial assistance to businesses, plant-based businesses, to help us set up our business. And um, uh, BOI is already drafting a plant-based industry roadmap, and they plan to um, to release the the result of their study in 2024. So we are really looking forward to that. We are actually helping BOI with data on MSMEs, but generally there is a lack of government support and for plant-based businesses. When government support, people ask me, what type of government support are you looking for? And I always tell them, it all starts with legislation. There is precedent to this. There are a lot of countries already who are getting into legislating uh, the requirement for plant-based options in food service establishments. And this is actually a move that I think would require government support, because we've already established that um, the vegetarian, vegan, plant-based market, although it's still a minority, it's a growing minority, and there are really people who are into going plant-based. So I think it is high time for the government to legislate a bill requiring all food service establishments to have a plant-based option or a healthier plant-based option on their menu. Not just to push for the plant-based industry, but um, it's already a public health emergency. The emergence and the growing number of people with diabetes and cardiovascular health and cardiovascular diseases and a lot of diseases that can be prevented or treated by a healthier diet. So I think number one really would be to get government support in that way. And another challenge in the Philippines would be, of course, like I mentioned, marketing and sales. Plant-based is a new concept in the Philippines, and it's very hard for us plant-based businesses to, I mean, the terminologies to use to market plant-based food is not really established in the Philippines. It's very hard for us to communicate to our market, to translate even plant-based to terms that will be embraced by the Filipino market. It's very hard to explain the concept to some people. And there are people also who have biases when it comes to plant-based food. So I think the marketing language and the market in general still needs to be developed greatly. And if I were to be asked how we can do this, I always say it should start in schools. Not just nutrition month. July is nutrition month, or a program every like specific month of the year, but to include nutrition, to include uh plant-based, the discussion of of plant-based food and nutrition in curriculums of schools. We have to take it to the grassroots level. We need to to make this knowledge available to students. We need to make the knowledge available to barangay health workers and to health centers for them to teach all of these things um, in the grassroots level. So when people are more aware of the benefits of eating more vegetables and as opposed to eating, like if you have 50 pesos to buy ingredients instead of buying instant noodles or canned food that's very high in sodium and cholesterol. You can opt for the option of buying vegetables, and the training or the knowledge to prepare these things in a very palatable way for the family. I think it's something really that we can do to educate more people so the market increases for plant-based. And of course, sourcing and supply of raw materials, it's another challenge because as I said, most of the plant-based food being manufactured in the country, we rely a lot in texturized vegetable protein, and most of these TVP are sourced from Argentina or China. They are being imported. Why? Because the local supply is being monopolized by very few companies, and unfortunately, it is more expensive to buy raw materials from local suppliers rather than to actually import the ingredients from elsewhere. It's more expensive, like locally produced ingredients would go from 220 to 240 pesos a kilo versus $2 per kilo when you import ingredients from outside. And uh, these points, these challenges in marketing and sales, and challenges in sourcing and supply of materials, this will also be solved if there's support from the government. If there's legislation that will be passed um, requiring food service establishments to offer healthier food options on their menu. More law of supply and demand. If there's more supply and there's more demand, there will be more suppliers, and then the prices will go down. So it actually really starts from government support. And in legislation, it takes a while, but even support for plant-based businesses to get our FDA certifications so we can get into the next phase of our expansion, like supplying hospitals and commissaries and all of these other markets that we are not able to tap into because we don't have the funding and we don't have the licenses and the certifications. So basically, these are some of the challenges that we are facing as in the plant-based industry. So this wraps up my presentation about trends, opportunities, and challenges in the Filipino plant-based. And I'm now inviting you to an open forum where you can give your comments or ask questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Camille.
Since people around the world are looking, we asked the speaker if she can give a phone number, office or cell phone, because writing an email is inconvenient, but calling up is very fast. So with your permission, may we ask the speaker to give us either office number or a cell number?
Yes.
Don't worry, 1,000 won't call you, but those who call you really do something. Usually they get about 10 or 12 calls only, but it's really action oriented, right? In other, they won't ask you about what they should eat, but more oriented towards what you can do to spread the good news you have.
So,
So could you,
my cell phone number, I'll give you my mobile number. That's 0969 302 0321. Again, that's 0969 302 0321. So that's my personal number. You can that's also my WhatsApp, Viber, and Telegram number. So you can message me there in different.
Mr. Chair, just want to thank her because many people give their office numbers. For you to give us your personal number is so generous. So thank you so much. After the open forum, I think we have much to do for the country with you as our leader. Okay, Mr. Chair, maybe you can close it now and we can do the open forum.
Okay. Yeah. So to close out the formal session, may I first present our certificate of appreciation to our speaker this morning, Camille. If you can flash it on screen. So the Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation, in partnership with the Management Association of the Philippines, together with our special partner institutions, senior special partner institutions, corporate members, and individual members, all present this certificate of appreciation to Camille S. Acosta for her invaluable support in the advocacy and promotion of agribusiness and countryside development, and for her commendable and unselfish services rendered to this foundation as our resource speaker, given on our 23rd weekly online meeting of 2023, July 27 in Makati City, Philippines, signed myself as our chairman and Ernie Ordonez as and then may I please invite everyone to just turn on your cameras for a group photo. Yeah, cameras on, please. Got a few people with maybe Noreen, Ime, Gerald from Bounty Agro, Kim. A few people still haven't turned on their cameras. Please, I invite you to turn on your cameras. There's some, yeah. So if Vivian, can you count us in?
All right po, we only have one page. Smile on 3, 1, 2, 3. Thank you po.
Okay, thank you very much. So with that, we end our formal session for this morning. As I mentioned earlier, if you are joining us 2 weeks later through our social media uploads, unfortunately, this is the extent of what you're able to get for free. The Agribusiness and Countryside Development Foundation is a member-supported nonprofit organization, and we are dependent on the generosity and support of our members and those who attend our forums to continue bringing you these sessions every week. If you'd like to join our informal sessions where we get to engage with our speaker and give you access to our wide network of agribusiness and countryside development organizations, consider joining us as a member. You can introduce yourself by emailing us at register@map-abcdf.org. Our links are in the description. For those of you who are joining us in our session today live, thank you very much for being with us today. If you do have other appointments that you need to get to, this does end our formal session, but if you can stay for our informal session, that's when we open our floor to questions from the audience this morning. But unfortunately, if you do have to go ahead, thank you very much for being with us this morning. We hope to see you next week. We already do have a topic for next week, so if we can just quickly flash it on screen. For what is, I personally believe, is a rather underrated crop in the country. So our session next week will be on mulberry production and tea factory. So from our friends at the Pampanga State Agricultural University. So thank you very much to Bernie App for bringing us our weekly speakers. This is, I'm sure, a very interesting topic for many in our audience, especially those who might not know that mulberries are actually already grown in some quantity in the country. Okay, so we hope to see you all next week for the session if you have to go ahead. All right, so with that, that ends our formal session. Thank you very much for being with us this morning, and we hope to see you again next week. Bye, everyone.